There is a writer who has amply demonstrated that he can declaim on virtually any subject and do it with clarity and some shine. He was chosen by a publisher to author a brief biography in a series of eminent lives. This is noteworthy because his eminence was William Shakespeare, about whom thousands of books have been written, and about whom nearly nothing is known, save a baptismal notice, a smattering of lawsuits and real estate documents, and his will, leaving his second-best bed to his wife, and some money for rings for his theatrical buddies. Given the fossil remains, more is known about dinosaurs than Shakespeare. Yet the books continue to pour forth. Often they are lengthy, learned, and closely reasoned, which is humorous because the man is a mystery, and anything vouched on his behalf is conjecture, confabulation, and confusion. I think of him as being like Santa Claus or Dracula. We don't know what he looked like, how he spelled his name, why he was called William, where he was at any given time, how he was as a husband and father, or as an actor or playwright, for that matter. The sum of what we know is nothing. So our author was faced with an impossible and pointless task in fields already plowed to plunder, a real test for his powers. He didn't do badly. He kept it short and admitted at every turn that when it came to Shakespeare, he had nothing to say. So what he did was write about the time and the circumstances, the man's stage, as it were. He wrote about Queen Elizabeth, who clearly lived far too long, and King James, a patron of the King's Men's theatrical troupe, which elevated William Shakespeare to the status of gentleman. He wrote about the theatrical world, which was oddly successful, perfect timing for a burgeoning playwright. I say oddly successful because it cost money that few people could afford. It occurred in the afternoon when people who had money were busy, and attending the theater was not the most respected way to pass the time. Also, because of sickness, theaters were closed, sometimes for a year or two. The sickness was rampant and lethal. London was a dirty place, unsanitary, densely populated, visited constantly by sailors who would be carrying some new bug. So London was a laboratory for illness, pestilence, and plague. Life was short and at risk. He also wrote about language. All learned texts were then, and for the next 100 years, in Latin. This was not true for the King James Bible, which was intended to standardize faith, spelling, and vocabulary, and for scripts of plays, which of course were in English because they were meant to be read by actors. The plays are a linguistic treasure trove, a veritable nursery for the English tongue. In them is the first recorded use of 2,035 words. Hamlet alone contains some 600 words not seen before, and Shakespeare is responsible for roughly 1/10 of all the most popular phrases in English. Impressive, though I understand John Dryden's protest about speeches pestered with figurative expressions. The bard can go on and on. Our author says that the two men who published the famous First Folio, collecting and preserving 15 of Shakespeare's plays, in rather raw form, it must be said, were unquestionably the greatest literary heroes of all time. He also writes about the sonnets, which only add to the mysteries of Shakespeare, including his sexuality. Here the flights of fancy really begin to flutter about. I favor W.H. Auden's comment, though it seems to me rather silly to spend much time on conjectures which cannot be proven true or false. What I really object to is their illusion that, if they were successful, if the identity of the friend, the dark lady, the rival poet, etc., could be established beyond doubt, this would illuminate in any way our understanding of the sonnets themselves. Finally, he considers the great many people who insist that the real-life man from Stratford could not possibly have possessed the learning required to write the plays. They have figured out a clutch of alternative authors, of which he gives the most well-known, but it's all more conjecture. conjecture about conjecture, really, making it second-degree conjecture, scholarly meringue. He is guilty of it too. He can't help it. In the midst of madness, he has to take a stand. Rather than withhold, he writes at the end, only one man had the circumstances and gifts to give us such incomparable works, and William Shakespeare of Stratford was unquestionably that man, whoever he was. To which I say, prove it. Useless, as I think is the case, unless, as I think is the case, we need no proof, for we have the works. And by the way, I checked, and they stopped the Eminent Lives series right after this one was delivered. Why? Another mystery.